Hey guys, my name is Shermie. I have a lot of different names and I just really like lore. This time around, I wanted to do a video talking about the entire history of the Junkers, and their entire story so far. This, I think, is going to be really helpful going into Season 4 of Reign of Talon, because obviously, the Junkers are going to be kind of important. There's been little teases and hints scattered everywhere this year, from voice lines to in-game things, and much more. So, I think it's time we actually explain how the Junkers got to where they are now, how they got the name, and of course, where they side in everything going on in the Reign of Talon. I'm not going to be yapping too much here, let's get right into it, because that's what you guys want to hear. But before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe. That stuff really helps the channel, and it lets me know what you guys like to see. So, yeah. At the end of this video, I will also say I'm going to be talking about the Reign of Talon storyline and kind of summarizing and speculating on where things are going to go. So keep that in mind for the end of the video. Anyways, let's get going with a quick introduction to the Junkers. Well, I say quick, but we have to go all the way back to the Omnic Crisis to really get a good idea of them. All the information in this video comes from Overwatch Declassified, the Wastelander animated short, and all Junker-related short stories and comics found on the Overwatch website. A lot of the Junker's story begins in the far past. During the Omnic Crisis, Australia was no different from the rest of the world. In turmoil and battle, the people here fought against the war machines, and the Omnium deep within the Outback itself. After the crisis, Australia tried to be on the forefront of human and Omnic relations. Omnics, the new term given to any awakened robot after the crisis, had achieved sentience, and needed somewhere to call home. The Australian government welcomed them with open arms, giving them the Omnium that once created them, but also the land around it to create a small settlement for the new people. This entire area was quarantined off, and for a brief time, it did look like peace was going to be possible here in Australia. But in the background, an entire group of people had been forgotten, the ones who actually lived on this land in the first place. These people, consisting of farmers, ex-military, and many more, were forced to leave their homes. Also, the Omnics who had started this war could live there instead. Many would grow even more resentment towards the Omnics because of this entire issue. Tired of the politics and just wanting to go back to their homes, the people here decided to form a new organization. ALF, the Australian Liberation Front. A few key members you may know are actually in the Wastelander cinematic, but also one of them is a hero in-game. The hero is of course Roadhog. Now, while not much is known about his exact origins with ALF or anything that happened before this, we do know he was a member of ALF. And with this, he had some type of military training based on in-game interactions. Next is Mason Hal, the king of Junkertown before the current queen. Not much is known about him as well, but we know he did serve during the Omnic Crisis, and the last known member was the current Junker Queen's father, who also served during the Omnic Crisis alongside Mason Hal. These three and many more formed a small army to fight back and take their home by any means necessary. Their rebellion started really small, but from the beginning, many different powers across the world turned to look at them. The Australian government tried to wait them out, hoping they would eventually calm down, and even Overwatch had turned to pay attention. But at this time, Overwatch's resources were spread way too thin to deal with a small rebellion here, and they couldn't focus on them fully. But no one expected them to do what they did next. After many small attacks and kind of rebellious moments with ALF, they finally decided to do a pretty daring and extremely risky one. The group one day approached the Omnium in mass. The Omnics who lived there were confused and tried to reason with the mob of people. However, this was met with extreme anger. The crowd forced their way into the Omnium, finding the core of the entire factory. They set explosives down all around it, and, after quickly escaping, set off the charges. Now, before this, it had only been speculated what would happen when an Omnium's core was detonated, yet, here it is, and it finally happened. This explosion was much more massive than anyone expected, and launched irradiated parts and Omnium scrap across the entire Outback. This basically shook the continent. The wastes were completely changed forever, creating the irradiated lands we know today. Now, the Australian government quickly got involved, seeing what had happened, and they quarantined the zone, making it against the law to enter. They assumed anyone inside had perished, but that wasn't exactly the case. The wastelands had become barbaric, and the people who survived the blast fought over scraps. The Omnics who once lived peacefully here became feral, broken and constantly looking for parts to make themselves whole. This created mechanical nightmares and abominations, and the humans of the Outback feared them. Now, these people from then on would become Junkers, the survivors of the Outback, forgotten by the world. There was a time of pure chaos, before any small communities would be made inside the ruins of the once Pharaoh-omnic home, the Australian Omnium. After this, and during this period, it was a time of complete chaos. A lot of the Junkers were split up into smaller groups, and many were trying to settle into bigger areas, but a lot of fear was taking over at this point in time as well. Junkers were terrified of Feral Omnics. Basically, those things became the boogeyman to them. The Omnics seemingly were pretty hostile, but that's not confirmed anywhere. Over time, the Junkers in the Outback would eventually begin to settle inside the old ruins of the Omnic home, aka the Australian Omnium. Now, you can see this with Junkertown and New Junk City. We probably need to get into how Junkertown society is formed real quick. Junkertown and the society within has a right of rule philosophy, meaning anyone can lead if they're strong enough. Now, we aren't exactly sure how many leaders the city has had, but the most recent before Junker Queen was Mason Hal, a man who became lax over time and his rule was easily beaten by the Queen. This of course happens in her animated short. Inside the city as well, the Junkers are split into multiple smaller groups. The first of these is the Tinkers, the ones in charge of creating new tech, and the mechs and much more were made by them, with Mary from the Wastelander short serving as their current leader or at least someone high up. Wreckers are another major group, responsible for much of breaking down the materials retrieved in the wastes. Demolitionists are in charge of the more explosive jobs. And lastly, Scavengers, which most Junkers fall into. They explore the wasteland, finding new scraps to bring back to the city. All of these groups live in the city together, but many groups bicker and battle constantly, only being kept in check by the leader of the city. This is the entire reason that they kind of all follow a leader. They're the only one who can really control the chaos to an extent. For the longest time, the city existed in a weird amount of, well, anarchy. I should say, anarchy is pretty normal for the Junkers, but in general, it was just way less structured than how it is today, and had no consistency, until Junker Queen came along. Odessa Stone, aka the Queen, defeated Mason Hal and began to make massive moves. In her youth, Odessa was exiled from Junkertown with her family. Because of this, she lived away from most Junkers, and her bond with her family grew really strong. Her dreams of ruling became ever stronger. As she grew older, her family passed on, and she was left alone once again, creating a legend for herself, until finally returning to take the throne. Under her rule, and even when she was on her own, the threat of the Feral Omnics in the Waste became a thing of the past. She hunted many legendary machines, from the 5 metal demons to many more, and made the land safer for Junkers to explore. After taking over Junkertown and defeating Mason Hal, she exiled him, the same thing he had done to her father and her family many years ago. With him gone, she brought much more balance and respect to her people, and the Junkers entered a relatively stable era. This is really the first time the Junkers had a more consistent style to their society, and it was a time of a lot of expansion. During this time, 2 Junkers would enter the story, Junkrat and Roadhog. While Junkrat was one of the newer characters to the Wastes, with many not really knowing where he came from, Roadhog was known, and a lot older. He had of course served in Alf, and was hired by Junkrat to be his bodyguard. Now, what exactly did Roadhog get out of this exchange? Well, he would get a small part of Junkrat's treasure, a legend Junkrat constantly spoke of. After this, the two became a pretty strong duo, causing chaos all over the Outback, until the Queen stepped in. She banished the two, forcing them to leave the wasteland behind, and this in turn probably would have made anyone else pretty down and disappointed, but these two turned this exile into a good thing of sorts, and started their own global crime spree. The two of them traveled the world, working with some factions and characters, and becoming most wanted fugitives. The events of the comic Going Legit, where Junkrat and Roadhog work with a businessman from Hyde Global and ultimately eliminate him, that's around this time. You can read that comic on Overwatch's website. While Junkrat and Roadhog go on their global crime spree, a certain hamster makes his appearance in the wasteland. Hammond, or Wrecking Ball, is from the Horizon lunar colony. After hitching a ride on Winston's rocket, Hammond crash-landed in the Australian Outback, immediately getting to crafting his mech we see in-game today, and joining the mech battles in Junkertown. He pretty easily rose through the ranks, becoming the champ of the arena. This, of course, would catch the attention of the Queen, who formed a close relationship with her new champion. At some point in time we fully don't know yet, Odessa would see and find out her champion was a small hamster, but she seemingly didn't care. This in turn made Hammond have even more respect for the Queen, and basically become completely loyal. The two became a dynamic duo in Junkertown, the Queen and her champion. Sometime later, Junkrat and Roadhog's global crime spree would come to an end, and the two decide it's finally time to return home. Yet, there was one problem. They were still exiled, so Junkrat came up with a genius plan. Use the treasure they had collected to trick the town. They would disguise themselves, plant explosives on the treasure, and blow it up right in front of the Queen. This is where the Junkertown map takes place and explains the story of that payload. Things did not go exactly as planned, obviously. The two failed, and were quickly captured with their treasure being confiscated. The events of the story of friendly rivalry play out next, and the two were sent to the arena, where the Queen planned to have her champion deal with them. Junkrat and Roadhog have to face off against the champ, and after a short battle, the duo are able to defeat him, and in the fight, reveal to the entire crowd of Junkers that the champ is a hamster. Now you would think the people of Junkertown would be shocked by this or even disgusted, but the people actually cheered him on, not really caring that he was a hamster, and instead happy to see what their champion looked like, and thought it was pretty cool. Meanwhile, after seeing her champion get defeated, the Queen was ready to just take this into her own hands. She jumped into the arena, but Junkrat, in a final attempt to not die, said that he would take her to his treasure, behind the final locked door in the Omnium. The old Omnium door was one of the last places the Junkers had not been able to get into from the original Omnium itself, so this was a pretty big deal. The Queen, after hearing where the treasure was, agreed with him, and took the two of them down with her to the door. When they arrived, the Tinkers and Junkers who came with the Queen, Junkrat, and Roadhog betrayed them, and they attacked, wanting to take whatever was inside for themselves. Of course, the Queen easily handled them, and saved Junkrat's life in the process. At the door, she forced Junkrat to do a retina scan, opening it. Inside, it's revealed what Junkrat's treasure was all this time. A huge Crisis-era airship, assumedly never used, and it was mostly operational. The Queen was excited by this, and had a couple ideas for what they could use it for. After this was Thoughtless Gods, a Hammond short story. This one I highly recommend reading as well. I won't be fully explaining it here, as the story more goes into Liu Chang and everything going on with them, but here are the most important things from this one. Hammond wants to repair the airship for Junker Queen, so he sets out on his own little adventure to Liu Chang to get important parts to repair the airship. He does get the parts, and it's implied at the end of the story that he's going to be fixing that ship soon. And that's everything with the Junkers so far. Now, for the rest of this video, I'm going to be talking about where I think Season 4 is going to be going. Of course, we're going to be getting that in a couple weeks from when this video goes live, so it's probably going to be outdated really quick. But I did want to give some wrap-up thoughts on the entire topic. So, there's been a couple voice lines and hidden things in the Reign of Talon storyline so far, specifically voice lines where Mauga was sent to Junkertown, and that storyline has been evolving over the seasons. In Season 1, we know Mauga was going to Junkertown, but by the end of Season 3, he's already been there. It sounds like he proved to the Junkers that Talon was worth working with. So, it seems like the Junkers and Talon have entered an alliance. This is a pretty big deal because I wasn't sure if anyone was going to be able to tame the Junkers to an extent, but it does seem like Talon has. Now, what exactly could they be wanting with Talon? Well, I have a couple ideas. The first idea is, of course, that they want the Junkers to cause a bit of chaos. Maybe they're the reason the Icelandic prison gets broken into in Season 5. I could see the Junkers causing a bit of chaos. Maybe they're the one who causes the prison break and lets out whoever's supposed to be breaking out, assumedly the Season 6 hero. That could be one way that they go about it, and they just needed the Junkers as kind of like a scapegoat. However, Talon is kind of taking over the world right now. In Overwatch Undivided, we see them taking over a ton of smaller factions and breaking into a ton of facilities, so I don't really know if they need the Junkers necessarily for that. This could just be a power play by Vendetta. Another idea is maybe the Junkers are going to be important to the D.mon storyline. So, of course, Season 4 is happening next season, and with that, we know D.mon is going to be important, but if you look back at the roadmap, it also shows Junker Queen and D.va fighting. So there is a good chance that either D.va is going to be going to Junkertown, or since it seems like the Junkers have already chosen a side, maybe they're going to be attacking Overwatch somewhere. maybe we do get to see this at Busan. I've seen that kind of speculation going around that the Junkers are going to invade Busan, and I do agree. Why would the Junkers invade Busan? What's the big deal there? Well, here's my idea, and this is the idea I've been rolling with for a little while. I do think the Junkers are invading Busan to get the EMP device. If you didn't know, the Mecha Squad and the Korean government are making a massive EMP bomb. It's on the map in-game. Now, if the Junkers get this EMP bomb and they escape, they could use this to hypothetically break into a prison and hypothetically cause a massive EMP disruption that would destroy any massive machines walking around, like in the concept art for the Icelandic prison. So, yeah, I think that's where we're gonna be going with all this. That makes the most sense to me at the moment. The Junkers would play a pretty big part in that, and that could also be used as a scapegoat for Vendetta. Just blame it on the Junkers, and she could get whoever she wants out of the prison. There's been a theory that the Season 5 character is going to be the Omnic Detective, and he's going to be trying to figure out what exactly happened at the prison and who broke out, and the Season 6 hero will probably be that prisoner. So this all makes sense, and tracks really well together, I think. Okay, past me, I'm gonna have to stop you right there. When I was making this originally, this was a little bit ago, but as of this morning, when I'm recording this segment, they have officially shown off that the Junkers have stolen the EMP device. It was shown off at the OWCs, so yeah, my money is they're going to be using that in the story next season to destroy or basically just get everyone out of the prison. So yeah, that to me is pretty much confirmed. But yeah, that's my idea for where I think things are going to be going next season. I wanted to bring that up towards the end of this video to just kind of explain my thoughts and, well, just kind of give it a nice little bow tie on top. I tried to touch on all the most important things for people to know, so yeah. Once again, if you want to look into more of the Junkers story, I highly recommend looking into all their animated, short stories, comics, everything, the whole shebang. All of that is available on Overwatch's website. But yeah, that's all from me, and it's good to be back after my little break. We're going to be focusing on whatever comes out in the new season very, very, very soon, and probably going to be busy for the next couple weeks. So, if you like lore, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye!